Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fadwa Wazwaz, and I wanted to begin addressing the story of Joseph and Jacob, the theme love and projection. Projection comes from the ego. So if we turn to our ego, we project whatever it is that we have within our ego, our lower base self, onto the world, as well as onto ourselves and even onto others. As I mentioned before, the ego is Satan's BFF. It's Satan's best friend. Love comes from God. The source of love is not the ego. Source of love is God. So if we turn to God, our most loving Lord, then we get the knowledge and wisdom that we need to traverse this world that we are placed in for a temporary time until we return. It's important to note, many of us do not understand that worldview, and so we assume that we are here either for eternity, or we plot and plan as a way to always have power, thinking that if we can subjugate people on earth to that power, that we will always be in power. This power, regardless what ethnicity you have or gender you have, like you're male or female, operates the same. This power operates the same. If it turns to its ego as the Pharaoh, and this is what the whole story is about, because a lot of times, as I said, people don't know what it is they're fighting. If it turns to the ego, it will respond like the Pharaoh. And the Quran gives us clear instructions on how person, regardless of what ethnicity or gender, if they turn to their ego, how they will reason, how they will function or malfunction, how they will respond to trials and tribulations. If that person in power turns to God, then trials and tribulations, again, will be a source of wisdom and light. They will carry a source of wisdom, light, blessings, as we will see in the story of Joseph and Jacob, that will help them to interpret events. I mentioned in the book, Love is Deeper Than Words, that on pain and suffering. We all feel pain. Pain is inevitable. All of us feel pain. Suffering comes from how we interpret events. Suffering comes from how we interpret events. And either that interpretation or misinterpretation will lead us to a road that will continue to increase that suffering, or it will lead us to a road where it provides, like, the end journey, the light. The end journey is a healing for that pain and for that trial, for that tribulation. So if you see somebody in trial and tribulation and they're in pain, pray for them. But from the outside, we don't know what's going on from the inside. But pray for them. Pray that God envelops them in His love, mercy, compassion, leads them in the right way. But the end of the story is a story about healing. I'll address this in the very end of this video, but I wanted to share with you just the beginning of the story. because once I review this, I will go back to power and oppression from Prophet Moses, lessons from Prophet Moses. But let me begin. I just took 5 pages, and this is from the book. I can just bring it to you here. Excuse me. I like this book a lot. I shared it with many people. A history of the prophets of Islam, derived from the Quran, Hadith, and commentaries. And this is by Suzanne Hanif. And I really appreciate, and I made dua for her. This is a very good book. You know, it's pretty big in nature. It's about like in each, there's 2 volumes. This is like 500 some pages. The other one's the same. So it is pretty big. You don't have to read it all in one sitting because it is pretty, like, she does have quite a lot of resources, information in here. I would encourage you to purchase these books by Suzanne Hanif and read them. And as you read them, read the Quran. It's pretty beneficial is what I think. But I would like, as I'm looking at the story, I'm going to take snapshots of some of this material from her book. And so let me begin with what I'm about to share. So in the story from her book, this is all from sections of her book on Joseph. She begins it with also a verse from the Quran. We granted him Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we appointed prophethood and scripture among his descendants. It's important to understand that Prophet Abraham had many sons, and of all his sons, Isaac and Ismail were chosen as prophets. Not all of his sons were chosen as prophets. Likewise, as I'll explain with Jacob, he also had many sons. Joseph was chosen as a prophet. The rest of his sons were not chosen as prophets. So being of an ethnic group, whether you are Arab, like, or you say, we're from the lineage of Ismail, doesn't make you chosen. Ismail was chosen. Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings, was chosen. I, as an Arab, was not chosen. Likewise, Abraham was chosen. Isaac was chosen. Jacob was chosen. Jacob also had another brother. So Isaac didn't just have Jacob, but he also had other children. Only Jacob was chosen. Others' children from Isaac were not chosen. So it's very important for us to understand what it means to be chosen. To be chosen again is you have been trusted to receive a divine message, that you are going to communicate that message to humanity from God. Not everyone is of a spiritual nature. We're not speaking here about ethnicity. It's talking about of a spiritual nature, that their spiritual nature is so pure that they will not distort the message. If you look into the prophets and how they speak about being questioned by God or speak about God, none of them ever speak for God without his permission and consent. They all tend to have that same spiritual nature from Adam all the way to Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings. So to be chosen, anyone can have a conversation. A guy can have a conversation with a group of Muslims. But our spiritual nature is such that we don't interpret what people are saying accurately. and we don't share it with others accurately. And this gets me into the issue of the shirt, and many, I think, still do not understand what the issue of the shirt is, but I'll discuss that towards the end. They were chosen as prophets because they were going to be receiving scripture. They were going to be receiving a divine message. And this divine message needs to be used to nurture not just, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, but it was going to be nurturing society around them. They need to coexist. That's what it means to have light. To have light means you need to have knowledge and wisdom on how to coexist with people around you. The one who created them and created you has that knowledge and that wisdom. He wants to impart it to you so that you could utilize it for yourself and others. It's not the ego, it's God. Now, if your nature is such that you're able to receive scripture, then God chooses you and imparts that knowledge to you, imparts that light, imparts that loving nature from God, which we will see in the story of Joseph and Jacob. But if your nature is such, as we see with Joseph's brothers, maybe the same ethnicity, same father, different mothers, but your nature is such you cannot be trusted with the truth, with divine light, you will not be chosen. So being Jewish doesn't make you chosen. Chosen in Islam means that you are trustworthy to receive divine light, to impart to yourself and the rest of creation. You will not distort it. That's what it means to be chosen. So let us begin with the story. Let me just increase the, again, from her book, The Family of Jacob, page 409. So if you are looking to, here, should push it down further. Well, let me make it a little bit like this. So we begin again with a verse from the Quran, chapter 6, and we granted him Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, each of them we guided. And previously we guided Noah, and among his descendants, David and Solomon and Job and Joseph and Moses and Aaron, and thus do we reward the doers of good. Now, this is being revealed to Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings. Because here we're talking about Moses and Harun. So again, you see mentioning a list of prophets. So God is telling this story, he's relaying it to Prophet Moses, upon him peace and blessings. He was chosen to receive this message. Someone else could have been, having received this message, just based on our nature, and if you see how we distort, we as human beings, not any particular person. If we're like, let's just say we believe Arabs are better than others, we would cut and paste some of this. Like I know some individuals who, for example, like they don't like Jews, okay? So you'll say, okay, well, I'll just say Abraham, I'll leave Noah, I'll leave Job, but I won't take the others, so they'll cut and paste this verse to appeal to their, whatever agenda they have. Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings, received the verse as it was relayed to him from God to his community and to the rest of creation. That's again what it means to be chosen. You're trustworthy to receive divine light, to teach the rest of creation. light onto the nations, because the nations are in darkness. They haven't received light. If you haven't received that divine light from God, you're turning to your ego, you're turning to the community around you, and whatever, superstitions or non-superstitions that they have, or, that's what you will utilize. And your nature will be such that as human beings, we all have same, like we all struggle with maybe different cocktail of diseases of the heart. And tribalism kicks in. It always kicked in throughout history. And we come up with our own solutions. And as we have seen throughout history, they are deadly. We do engage in genocide. Animals do not do genocide. Humans do genocide. So we now come to a story which is unique among the stories of the prophets in the Quran, the story of Joseph, son of Jacob, the grandson of Isaac, and the great-grandson of Prophet Abraham. May God's peace and blessings be upon them all. And its uniqueness lies in the fact that it's the only story of a prophet, I'm right here, that is told in entirety in a single chapter of the Quran. That is the 12th surah, again, it's called Yusuf in the Quran, and it has 111 verses, 98 relate to Joseph. It is a story that the noble personality of Jacob also comes alive. I mean, most people, as I said before, I'm not sure why they turned it into a story between Joseph and Zulaikha, but it's really about Joseph and Jacob. This is where Jacob comes alive in the story. An example of that would be, we don't have a chapter titled Jesus in the Quran, calm them peace. But his story comes alive through the chapter on Maryam. And so we have to understand that this story, sometimes there's like the surface, and then there is another story that is there that this chapter brings to life, which is the story of Jacob. It's difficult to correctly understand the story of Jacob and Joseph, calm them peace, without understanding some background material. And this is why I appreciate her books, and I encourage you to read them, because she gives that background information that is really helpful for us when we're doing our reflections on the stories of the prophets. Ibn Kathir reports that the people of the scripture, that is the Jews and Christians, say that when Isaac was 40 years of age during the lifetime of his father Abraham, he married Rebecca, daughter of Bethuel. When no children were born to her, Isaac, alayhi salam means upon him peace. When you see an A here after a prophet's name, it means upon him peace. He prayed to his Lord, and she bore twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Again, Jacob was chosen, but his brother wasn't chosen. Now, we don't get into like demonizing or dehumanizing the other. God in his wisdom and his knowledge knows who to choose. We don't turn in envy, and this is what happened with the issue of Joseph, if God chooses one and not the other. He's the creator. He's entitled to choose who he wants to be the chosen to receive the divine light. He chose Jacob. His twin brother is not chosen. Jacob is chosen. When we say chosen in Islam, it's based on a spiritual nature and a trustworthiness. It's not based on ethnicity. So although they're both the same ethnicity, and they both were children of a prophet, both of them were not chosen. Jacob was chosen. Like his father and grandfather before him, Jacob, alayhi salam, on in peace, and his family lived in Hebron, or Khalil, as Palestinians say, in Palestine. They were actually Bedouin people, herders of sheep and goats. That's the story of, Jacob and the children of Jacob, who were closely related by ties of kinship and culture to the Arabs of the Arab Peninsula. So it seems kind of weird when people come from Europe who are totally disconnected from the culture of Arabs in the Arab Peninsula and look down at them. And they claim to be connected or related to the children of Israel, as Jacob is referred to Israel. Yet they don't seem to recognize that history. They seem to be more obsessed with the ties with Europe, which is fine, but it's a telling for them about where they actually are related to. Are they related to this culture, which comes down from, Jacob and others, or are they related to Europe and Western civilization? It is said that Jacob, upon him peace, first married Leah, the daughter of his maternal uncle, Laban, and she bore him 6 sons. So this is again the children of Jacob. And then Leah died, and Jacob married her sister, Rachel, who bore him Joseph and Benjamin. Another of Jacob's wives bore him 2 more sons, and then a 4th bore him 2 brothers. So he has a total of 12 sons and 1 daughter. Just so you know. The biblical scholars give the date of Joseph's birth at around 1906 BC. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of stories around all of these children, but God relates it within the centering the story of Joseph, because that's who he chose. Go a bit further. As we know, Jacob, upon peace, succeeded Isaac in prophethood. Like I said, he was chosen. His other brother was not chosen. At some point in his life, Jacob, upon peace, came to be called Israel. So when we're referring to, in my writings, children of Israel, it doesn't refer to nationality Israel, the state, settlers, colonial settlers, Israelis. There is no connection between children of Israel in the Quran and them. This story is for all of us to reflect on and to recognize some insight, some wisdom, some knowledge, and to check ourselves and check our community and check how we interact with the rest of creation. So the mere fact that in 1948, the state of Israel was created by atheists doesn't mean that somehow the divine light that was given to Jacob and Joseph somehow was inherited by all the people who are citizens of the state of Israel. That is totally ridiculous and not true. They are like the rest of the human race. If they turn to God and they follow the actions that are required for them, just like it was required of Jacob and Joseph, then they will receive that divine light. As God says, if you fear Allah, He will teach you. But if they turn to their ego and their tribalism, wherever it is, then they will also receive that very same darkness that other nations had received, who turned in kind as they are turning. So in the Quran, when we reference the children of Israel or Bani Israel, or simply Israelites, that's who we're referring to. We're not referring to the Israelis who are, citizens of the state of Israel. Since there is no mention in the Quran of Jacob's people in the sense of Noah's people or Lot's people, perhaps he was a prophet only to his own family members, who were quite numerous, as is suggested by God, saying, and this Abraham enjoined on his sons. So did Jacob. O my sons, indeed God has chosen the religion for you, so do not die except that you be Muslims. Sometimes when you are chosen, it doesn't mean you are chosen for the whole world. It's based on also the power that you have, or with God's knowledge and wisdom, who he wants you to nurture. Maybe that you're chosen just for your family. Maybe you're chosen for that community. It maybe you're chosen for, globally. And this is how Muslims interpret Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings. His chosenness, that he was chosen for all of humanity until the day of judgment. Not every prophet was chosen in the same way. And some of that has to deal with the power that a prophet will be given, will support his chosenness. And I'll explain that as we move with the issue of the shirt. The divine wisdom of appointing Jacob, upon him peace, as a prophet to his large family becomes apparent in the later history of the children of Israel. For perhaps the descendants of Jacob were the only people in the entire world at the time who worshiped the Creator. May his glory be exalted and lived according to his guidance. So that was why he was chosen just for his family. They were the only ones who were worshiping God. They were not, it was not the whole world was worshiping God. Still, nowhere does God say, go and genocide people. That was never imparted onto any prophet to go genocide people because they were not worshiping God. But how to nurture their own community. Notice how many sons he had. And I mentioned this because, Israelis, here I'm referring to Israeli citizens of Israel. We'll talk about, well, if you face genocide, Palestinians, well, how is it that your number increased? Well, that's the divine light. The divine light is that you are supposed to be nurturing your community and moving it forth. If you are facing genocide, you are supposed to be increasing your progeny. You're supposed to be nurturing life. You're supposed to be nurturing faith. You're supposed to be nurturing turning to God. So although he was the only person, Jacob, that was worshiping God, that what God imparted on him was that, again, is why we have seen he ended up having many children. He's here, one prophet chosen by God, and he's having children to impart the message to. You can't take on the whole world when you're only the only family worshiping God. And genocide is not the answer. What you do is you nurture your own family, your own community. So if you're facing genocide and people are coming at you, then you teach life. You go ahead and you nurture and you breed. So clearly, it's not like, Jews are asexual. They preach and they talk about and using their own, I don't want to make it sound like a knockout or anything, but they have sex. So you could easily breed and have children, just like Jacob did. You could have children and continue to have children and nurture them and teach them life. This is the light that was given to Jacob. Genocide was not given to Jacob. Having many children was given to Jacob. And so that was how he started to, that was how the message came. It came through that. You start nurturing your own family and your own community, and you part on them to the teachings of the faith. Now, just the fact that somebody is part of the family doesn't mean that they all have, like, again, they were all chosen by God, but they still have to be trained and purified and disciplined. And those are part of the teachings, as we will see here, that were given to Prophet Jacob for his children. Now, I'll continue here and then make sure, let me just push it here, push it down. So we're going to go into the beginning of how the Quran begins the story. These are the verses of the clear book. Indeed, we have revealed it as an Arabic Quran that you may understand. I don't want to give commentaries on all of this, but if you go further down, you can understand. Here, you refers to the Arabic-speaking people of Muhammad's time, among whom the Quran was originally revealed. Again, the nicest, the loveliest, the most beautiful stories, Ahsan al-Qasas. And just to kind of point out these two from her notes. The opening of the story, with these words, God Most High, opens the best of stories. The fascinating history of Prophet Joseph. May God's peace and blessings be upon him. The opening of the story depicts Joseph, upon him peace, as a boy living in his father's house, together with his younger brother, Benjamin. And I gave you a little bit of the tree of his family and his 10, I think they're half brothers, but she put step brothers, but they're half brothers who were all his elders. Various circumstances suggest that Joseph's age may have been about 10 at the time. And this is how we understand it, that he was a young lad still. So only natural that there should be friction, rivalry, and jealousy among the 12 sons of 4 mothers. This is just expected. It's not something wrong with any family. This is just how families operate. And this is, again, the wisdom that came to Prophet Jacob was how to deal, with that family rivalry. In the case of Joseph, upon him peace, there was more to the matter than that. The Quran accounts make it clear that Joseph, upon him peace, excelled in his brothers as the sun outshines the stars, as might indeed be expected, since he has been chosen by God for prophethood. It was not revealed at that time, but they could see he was chosen for something special because that special nature came out of him. However, it was his very excellence that gave his 10 half-brothers cause for envy and enmity. Sometimes God gives you that, again, chosenness. And what is it? It's that light. It's how you act and respond and relate with God. So he was chosen. The rest of his half-brothers were not chosen. One cause of this envy was undoubtedly the fact that this young Joseph, upon him peace, was incredibly handsome. For the prophet, upon him peace and blessings, said of him, as by the way, because he's the leader of the prophets, you use upon him peace and blessings. Said of him, Joseph and his mother were given half of all the beauty in the world. This is how attractive Him and his mother were. This was not sufficient cause it was clearly obvious to his brothers that he was more dear to their father than themselves. This was not merely the cause of Joseph's beauty as claimed in Genesis 37:3, because he was born to Jacob in his old age, but rather because of the loveliness of his spirit. As a prophet possessing deep wisdom and insight, Jacob, again, he was chosen. He had insight, he had light. Naturally recognize the excellence of Joseph's nature and his spiritual gifts. You can tell when someone has a spiritual nature that's just not envious, not jealous, doesn't attack people. And hence he cherished him like a treasure amongst his other sons. He treasured his other sons, but you know how sometimes some people's spiritual nature is very loving, is very, not in a loving in a possessive way, as I mentioned with the story of Moses, to say anything about it, the mother, but to say that they're able to receive from God that pure, loving Lord light and relate it to the Father, as we will see in the story. As the story opens, the young Joseph, upon a piece, is engaged in a private, intimate conversation with his father. A private and intimate conversation with his father, during which he relates a dream or a vision he just had. "Oh, my father," he said, "indeed I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." Now here you're seeing 11. Remember, he has 10 half-brothers and 1 sister. "Oh, my father," he said, "indeed I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." Jacob, upon his peace, immediately grasped the meaning of his son's vision. Because he's a prophet. He receives, he can interpret dreams better than somebody who doesn't turn to God often. Remember, as I mentioned, they turn to God, not a single moment or single event. It's an often repeated, perpetually looping event until you exit. Being yet a boy, Joseph, upon his peace, didn't realize its significance, but his father knew that his brothers would have no difficulty understanding it. Jacob, upon his peace, therefore cautioned the innocent lad to keep what he had seen to himself. And this is where I'm going to get into the shirt. Truth, if it's revealed before its time, will cause you harm. Truth, if it's revealed before its time, will cause you harm. Because the spiritual nature of people around you, I keep saying birds of a feather flock together. The spiritual nature of people around you is they will use that truth or that evidence to harm you. Not everybody can receive evidence. Joseph's shirt, and I'll discuss this and review it in the future. Just to note, before I do that, I checked various individuals' writings, and nowhere did they mention this. So if they start mentioning it from this point forward, it's because they grabbed it from me, and then they went ahead and claimed, or they went and looked and said, you know, Ibn Qayyim or somebody else. This is literally what they do. Truth, the issue of the shirt is that if you mention the truth before its time, that evidence will be used to harm. Remember, he's a young lad. So if you're a young lad and you bring out the truth before it's time, it will be used to harm you. So the shirt will be used as evidence to harm you. Remember, they brought the shirt, and I'll discuss it in the coming days. Truth, if it's presented when you are in your peak of strength, kind of like Moses, we said, when he reached the state of maturity and strength, people will confirm that your innocence. They'll say, yes, you are telling the truth. But again, it will land you in prison because you don't have the power to use that truth in your favor. Again, the spirit, we're talking here about spiritual nature of people. An example of that, when Moses came to the Pharaoh, he presented the truth. Magicians accepted it. It was confirmed. It's true. He was at that stage of strength. But the hearts were not ready to recognize the truth, although they knew it's true. And what will they do? They will use their power to attack you further. They will use that power to attack you further. So we saw again in the next, as when Joseph reached in his strength, what happens? His shirt now is used again, confirms his innocence. But if your spiritual nature cannot handle the truth, it doesn't matter that the person recognizes and it's confirmed within someone within your own court. In this case, they say someone from her family. In the case of Pharaoh, the magician confirmed someone from your own court. Like we're seeing right now, Westerns, not anti-Zionist Jews, confirming what Israel is doing is genocide. Still, you don't have power. That will be used to harm you. Because a tyrant or someone whose spiritual nature, again, it could be man, woman, whatever ethnicity, if they're of a tyrannical nature and you confirm the truth to them, they will become more tyrannical. So this is what happened with the Pharaoh. This is what happened with Joseph. Truth, when it's confirmed, the evidence of the shirt confirms your innocence, even at the position of now, you're reached strength, landed him in prison. Truth, when you're given power and then you are able to teach it, you could use that same shirt. It provides healing. Again, power, what kind of power? How is it being used? When you're dealing with brothers who have power, like they were the ones who were all older than him, but their spiritual nature, doesn't matter if their ethnicity is the same, their spiritual nature was not refined or purified. If you relate to them truth, it's going to end up harming you. And that's what the shirt represents. The shirt represents if you convey the truth when you are in a position of weakness, it will be used against you. If you convey the truth in a position of strength, it will be used against you, although your innocence will be confirmed. Just like now, people are beginning to see that the Palestinians are actually being genocided, and you're seeing all this evidence and people confirming it. Because we still don't have power to enforce what needs to be enforced. But the issue here is not to act, but how we interpret events, because at times we extract an understanding that contradicts the expected result. So if you don't have power, your expectation should be, if you confirm the truth, is people will plot and plan against you to harm you. If you're at the position of weakness, they might succeed and you will be thrown in the well, kind of well of dark, physical darkness, not in the heart, but in, again, external. If you're a position of strength, it will be confirmed. Everyone in the kingdom knew of his innocence, but still it will be, you will not have the power to bring the person who's guilty to justice. When you are given power by God, that same shirt will provide that, which is evidence, will be a healing. So, O my son, he warned, do not tell your vision to your brothers, or they will make a plot against you. Indeed, Satan is a clear enemy to the human being. Again, why is he saying Satan? When you turn to your ego, you're essentially turning to Satan, because the ego colludes with Satan. Like I said, the ego is Satan's BFF. So if you turn to your ego, you are going to be Satan's BFF. These words suggest that Jacob, upon his peace, had sufficient evidence of his son's enmity toward the young Joseph to make him concerned that they might scheme against him. Now, he didn't build an apartheid wall between them where he said, okay, these sons, they're enemies to Joseph, so therefore I am going to make sure they're subjugated and they're oppressed. He wasn't given that light from God to do that. But what he did do is he warned Joseph. He didn't tell him that these are your enemies, but he said, do not tell your vision to your brothers, or they will make a plot against you. Don't share some things. If you share it, it doesn't mean you have something, a shame story. It just means certain truths, if you reveal before their time, people whose spiritual nature is not pure will use that against you. They will plot and plan to harm and hurt you. And thus will your Lord choose you and teach you the interpretation of events. So the story reminds us he's here being taught wisdom and knowledge of how to interpret events. Again, pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable, but we suffer because of how we interpret these events. Doesn't mean we won't feel pain and we won't scream and we won't, that's pain. But the suffering where we become withdrawn from God and we don't go to God, and we don't turn to God, and we give up on God, that's based on our interpretation of the events, interpretation of life. As he completed it previously upon your fathers, Abraham and Isaac. So Jacob, upon his peace, prophesied, clearly seeing the auspicious future that was in the store for his beloved son. Indeed, your Lord is knowing and wise. In the future, these words would serve as a reminder to Joseph, upon his peace, that no matter what difficulties he might face, all things are in the hands of the all-knowing, all-wise, who is indeed the best of planners. Reading them in Arabic, one experiences a sense of mystery. Doesn't give the full details to Jacob. He just gives them, like, if you could see, the important names of God that he needs to turn to for this unfolding future. Your Lord is most knowing, another translation of Al-Alim, and wise, Al-Hakim. So this is what he needs to recognize as this story unfolds. So he puts that into the heart of his son, Joseph. Indeed, your Lord is knowing and wise. So that is how the story begins and how it starts to unfold. It can be seen as a history, it can be seen as a parable, a subtle interplay between divine will and human knowledge and our desire to control events. So I begin this again. Where am I at here? This page 412, and I'll have other videos as we continue this theme on love and projection from Joseph and Jacob, just to reiterate the issue again of the shirt. And I'll mention it as we continue going forth in the chapter. When you reveal the truth before it's time, it can be used against you to harm you. If you are weak, you'll be thrown in the well. The well, and I'll mention that, the interpretation of that later. If you are in strength, you're able to defend yourself. That evidence can be used to confirm your innocence, but you'll be thrown in prison. If you are given a position of power, that evidence, that very same shirt, can be used to provide healing. Just something to note again about the story, the history, the parable, but then the subtle interplay between divine will, human knowledge, and control of events. I hope this was beneficial. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.